A homeless woman stops a mafia boss's funeral, screaming 3 words no one expected. He's not dead. At first, they laugh at her until the coffin starts to move. The room explodes in chaos, and the men in black suits drag her out, ready to silence her forever. But when the mafia boss opens his eyes, the world changes. He wants to know why the stranger saw the truth when even his own family betrayed him. Locked inside his mansion, she's caught between a man who can kill with one look and the terrifying secret that could destroy them both. Because saving his life didn't just pull her off the streets, it pulled her into the darkest war the Mafia has ever seen. Now he'll kill to keep her, even as she discovers the one truth that could turn him against her forever. So the question is, did she save a man from death, or awaken the devil who will never let her go? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The ancient cathedral loomed over Elena Rossi like a stone giant, its Gothic spires piercing the gray winter sky. Her threadbare coat offered little protection against the bitter cold as she huddled near the entrance, watching Milan's most dangerous criminals file inside to mourn their fallen king, Matteo De Luca, Il Diavolo, the devil himself. Her stomach cramped painfully, reminding her why she'd risked coming here. Where there was a funeral, there would be food. After 3 days without eating, she was desperate enough to crash a mafia boss's service. Elena slipped inside behind a group of black-suited men, their shoulders heavy with grief or guilt, she couldn't tell which. The cathedral's interior wrapped her in shadows and whispered prayers, hundreds of candles flickering against stained glass. The air was thick with incense and tension. She chose a spot in the last pew, half hidden behind a marble column. From here, she could see the open casket at the altar, surrounded by enough white roses to fill a flower shop. Her father had once worked for the De Luca family as an accountant, before everything fell apart. She'd never met Matteo De Luca herself, but everyone knew his reputation. The man had been a monster in an expensive suit, ruling Milan's underworld with calculated brutality. Now he lay still, looking almost peaceful, almost human. The priest's Latin echoed off the vaulted ceiling as Elena studied the mourners. Some wore their grief openly. Others maintained masks of stone. Armed guards lined the walls, their hands never far from concealed weapons. These men had lost more than a boss. They'd lost their shield against rival families who would now smell blood in the water. Elena's attention drifted back to the casket. Something wasn't right. At first, she thought it was a trick of the candlelight, but no, there it was again. A twitch, the slightest movement of his fingers against the silk lining. Her heart stopped. She blinked hard, certain she was hallucinating from hunger. But when she looked again, she saw it, the barely perceptible rise and fall of his chest. "He's breathing," she whispered, her voice lost in the priest's droning prayers. The woman next to her shot her an irritated glance. Elena's mind raced. If she was wrong, speaking up would mean certain death. If she was right and said nothing, she'd be letting a man suffocate in his own coffin. Even a monster didn't deserve that. "He's alive," she said louder, earning more glares and a harsh "shh." The priest paused. The guards tensed, and Elena saw those fingers twitch again. "Stop." She jumped to her feet, her voice echoing through the cathedral. "Matteo De Luca is alive. Look at his hand, he's moving." The silence shattered. Women screamed. Men cursed. Guards drew weapons, all aimed at her. Elena's survival instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet carried her forward instead, pushing through the chaos toward the casket. "Stupid girl." A guard grabbed her arm roughly. "You dare disrespect." "Look." Elena wrenched free, nearly falling against the casket in her desperation. Up close, the evidence was unmistakable. The slight color in his lips, the way his eyelids flickered. "He's breathing. Someone's tried to kill him with poison or drugs or something, but it didn't work." "Get her out of here," someone roared. Multiple hands seized her, dragging her back. "No, wait." Elena struggled, knowing these might be her last moments alive. "Just check. Please, just check his pulse." An older man in an expensive suit approached the casket. Elena recognized him as one of the family's capos from newspaper photos. With trembling fingers, he pressed 2 fingers to Matteo's neck. His face went pale. "Dio mio, she's right. Call the doctor, now." The cathedral erupted into controlled chaos. Guards snapped into action, securing exits and herding civilians out. Others carefully lifted their boss from the casket, checking him for injuries. Orders were barked in rapid Italian. Elena found herself shoved to her knees, zip ties cutting into her wrists. Questions flew at her from all directions. Who are you? How did you know? Who sent you? What family are you with? She could barely breathe through her terror. No one sent me. I just saw him breathing. I was only here because she was homeless, because she was hungry, because she had nowhere else to go. The truth stuck in her throat. Search her, someone commanded. Rough hands patted her down, finding nothing but an old sketchbook and a few coins. Through the chaos, Elena watched them load Matteo's body onto a stretcher. His eyelids fluttered, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought she saw them open just a sliver of dark eyes that seemed to fix directly on her. Then he was gone, rushed out a side door to waiting vehicles. A bag was shoved over her head, plunging her into darkness. They hauled her to her feet and marched her forward, her feet stumbling on the cathedral stone floor. The winter air bit through her thin clothes as they emerged outside. Car doors opened. Hands pushed her down onto leather seats. The engine rumbled to life as Elena tried to steady her breathing in the suffocating darkness of the hood. She'd saved Matteo De Luca's life, but as the car pulled away from the cathedral, Elena realized that might not matter. She was now in the hands of men who killed for a living, men whose world she'd just upended. They would want to know how she knew, why she was there, what she'd seen. They would assume she was part of whatever plot had nearly killed their boss. The car turned sharply, and Elena fought back tears. She'd survived 3 years on Milan's streets after her father's betrayal had destroyed their family. She'd endured hunger, cold, and despair. But she had a terrible feeling that her luck had finally run out, all because she couldn't keep her mouth shut, all because some stupid part of her couldn't watch even a monster suffocate in his coffin. The car accelerated, carrying her deeper into the heart of Milan's underworld, toward whatever fate awaited a homeless girl who dared to disrupt a mafia funeral. The silk sheets felt wrong against Elena's aching body. Her eyes fluttered open to an unfamiliar ceiling painted with cherubs and golden clouds. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, the kind of dream that came from sleeping on cold church steps, imagining warmth and luxury. But the throbbing in her shoulders where the guards had gripped her was too real. The heavy curtains blocking most of the sunlight were a deep crimson, matching the wallpaper's intricate patterns. Everything screamed old money and power. This was no dream. This was a gilded cage. Elena sat up slowly, wincing. Her clothes from yesterday were wrinkled but intact. Small mercy. That. The bedroom was larger than any apartment she'd ever lived in, with antique furniture that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, catching what little light slipped through the curtains. She tested the door. Locked, of course. The windows, too, though the view of manicured gardens below made her stomach lurch anyway. 3 stories up, at least. The sound of a key in the lock made her jump. 2 guards entered, their black suits pristine, their faces emotionless. The taller one jerked his head toward the door. "Boss wants to see you. Now." Elena's throat went dry. Matteo De Luca, the man she'd watched rise from his own coffin yesterday. The Devil of Chicago, they called him. And she was about to face him alone. The guards marched her through endless hallways of marble and gilt, their footsteps echoing. Family portraits lined the walls, generations of De Lucas, all wearing the same hard expression. Elena's legs felt heavier with each step. They stopped at massive double doors. One guard knocked twice, then pushed them open. The study beyond was dimly lit, mostly by a fireplace that cast dancing shadows on floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Behind an enormous desk sat Matteo De Luca himself. He looked different from the corpse she'd seen yesterday. Still pale, but alert. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. A crystal tumbler of amber liquid sat untouched by his right hand. His eyes, though, those were exactly as she remembered from the coffin. Dark, penetrating, completely devoid of mercy. "Leave us," he commanded, his voice rough but strong. The guards disappeared, closing the doors behind them. Elena stood frozen, hands clasped to stop their trembling. Should she speak first? Apologize? Beg? Sit. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. She perched on the edge, ready to bolt, though she knew there was nowhere to run. "How did you know?" The question came like a whip crack. I'm sorry? Don't play stupid." His fingers tightened on the arm of his chair. "How did you notice I was alive when my own men I've trusted for years, didn't?" Elena swallowed hard. "Your fingers, they moved, just barely, but I saw it. And you just happened to be watching my hands during my funeral?" His tone dripped with skepticism. "I watch everything," she said quietly. "When you live on the streets, you have to notice details. The wrong detail missed could mean death." His eyebrow arched slightly. "The streets?" Heat crept into her cheeks. "I'm homeless. I only came to the funeral because—" She trailed off, shame choking her. "Because? Because I knew there would be food after," she whispered. "At the reception. I hadn't eaten in 2 days." He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "A touching story, almost believable, except I don't believe in coincidences." "It's the truth." "The truth," he repeated, leaning forward, "is that someone tried to kill me. Poisoned me so thoroughly that my own doctor pronounced me dead. And then you, a complete stranger, just happened to be there to save my life." His laugh was bitter. "Either you're part of it, or you're being used by someone who is." "I'm not. I swear I just wanted to help." His smile was cruel. "No one helps anyone in this world without expecting something in return. So until I figure out what game you're playing, you'll stay here, under guard. If I find out you're working with my enemies." He left the threat hanging. Elena's hands were shaking again. "How long?" "Until I'm satisfied one way or the other." He pressed a button on his desk, and the doors opened immediately. "Take her back to her room. Post 2 guards at all times." The same men as before appeared at her sides. As they led her out, Matteo spoke again. "Oh, and Elena?" She turned, surprised he knew her name. "Don't try anything stupid. My hospitality has limits." The walk back seemed longer, her mind racing with implications. Someone had tried to kill Matteo De Luca. Now she was caught in the middle of what was surely about to become a bloody power struggle. Back in the bedroom, she heard the lock click with dreadful finality. The sun was setting now, painting the room in deep shadows. She paced, trying to think of a way out of this nightmare. As darkness fell, voices drifted up from somewhere below, angry voices, getting louder. She crept to the door, pressing her ear against it. Could be working for anyone. The timing's too perfect. Probably part of Luca's plan. Should just kill her now to be safe. Elena stumbled back from the door, her heart pounding. She crawled into the massive bed, pulling the covers around her like armor. The voices continued to rise and fall, men arguing about her fate as if she were a piece in their game. She curled into a tight ball, trying to make herself as small as possible. Tomorrow, Matteo would question her again. Tomorrow he might decide she wasn't worth the risk of keeping alive. Tomorrow, everything could end. The voices downstairs grew more heated. Something shattered. Elena squeezed her eyes shut and prayed for morning not to come. Elena woke to silk sheets and the scent of lavender, so different from the cardboard box she'd been calling home. Her body ached, bruises blooming where rough hands had grabbed her at the funeral. Sunlight streamed through heavy burgundy drapes, illuminating a bedroom that screamed old money, ornate furniture, gilded mirrors, and artwork worth more than she'd ever see in her lifetime. A sharp knock made her jump. 2 women entered, faces stern and movements efficient. They carried designer clothing and a covered silver tray. "Boss's orders," the taller one said, laying out a black dress and heels. "Get dressed. Eat. Don't try anything stupid." Elena's stomach growled at the smell of fresh bread and eggs, but pride made her hesitate. "I'm not hungry." The shorter woman's laugh was cold. "Honey, we all saw you, trying to crash that funeral for free food. Don't play games." Heat crept up Elena's neck. She'd been desperate enough to risk sneaking into a Mafia funeral, and now she was paying the price. The women left, and she heard the distinctive click of a lock. She ate quickly, savoring real food after weeks of dumpster diving, then slipped into the dress. It fit perfectly, unsettling proof that someone had been watching her long enough to know her size. The door opened again, and this time Matteo De Luca filled the frame. He'd traded yesterday's hospital pallor for a sharp black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame. "Sir, she's been cooperative. one guard reported. Mateo's dark eyes never left Elena. "Leave us." The guard hesitated. "But sir, your condition?" "Out." One word, spoken softly, but the man practically ran. Elena backed away as Mateo stalked forward. Her spine hit the wall, and suddenly he was there, one hand planted beside her head, the other gripping her jaw. "Let's try this again," he said, voice deceptively gentle. "Who sent you?" "No one sent me." Elena forced herself to meet his gaze. "I was cold and hungry. The church looked warm, that's all." His fingers tightened. "You expect me to believe you just happened to notice I was alive when my own trained men missed it?" "I notice things. It's how I survive." She swallowed hard. "The way your fingers twitched, the slight fog on the glass above your face. And you just had to announce it to everyone?" His thumb traced her bottom lip, a touch that was both threat and caress. "Do you know what happens to people who interfere in my business?" Elena didn't flinch. "Kill me if you're going to. I've got nothing left to lose anyway." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe curiosity. He studied her face like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Everyone has something to lose. My mother's dead. My father abandoned me. I sleep in alleys and eat from trash cans." She lifted her chin. "What else can you take?" Mateo stepped back, straightening his cuffs. "Your life, for one. Death might be kinder than the streets." A harsh laugh escaped him. "Trust me, little girl, there are worse things than sleeping rough." He moved to the door. "You'll stay here until I decide what to do with you. Try to leave, and you'll learn exactly how creative I can be with punishment." The lock clicked behind him, but Elena was already searching the room for escape routes. The windows were sealed shut, but a door led to a private bathroom with a small window. Too small for her to squeeze through, but it gave her a view of sprawling gardens below. She waited until nightfall, listening to the guards change shifts. When silence fell, she crept to her room's door and worked a hairpin into the lock. One skill poverty had taught her: never let a lock stop you from finding shelter. The hallway was empty. Elena padded barefoot down marble stairs, following signs of fresh air until she found a side door to the gardens. Freedom beckoned in the form of shadowy trees and a distant gate. She made it halfway across the lawn before voices made her freeze. Men in dark clothes were scaling the garden wall, weapons glinting in moonlight. Not guards, their movements were too furtive, too hostile. Elena's heart pounded. She'd walked right into an attack on the estate. As she turned to run back, a hand clamped over her mouth. "Well, what do we have here?" A rough voice whispered. "De Luca's new pet?" The sound of gunfire split the night. The man holding her jerked and fell, revealing Mateo in the doorway, pistol raised. His expression was terrifying, pure predator, no trace of humanity. More shots rang out. Mateo moved like a demon, each bullet finding its mark. Bodies dropped around Elena as she stood frozen, watching him paint the garden in blood. When it was over, he grabbed her arm, fingers digging in painfully. Blood spattered his expensive suit, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Inside, now, he practically dragged her through the house, ignoring her stumbling attempts to keep up. Not until they reached her room did he spin her around, pressing her against the door. "You think you can leave me?" he snarled, face inches from hers. Blood streaked his cheek, and his eyes burned with something darker than anger. "You're mine now." The morning chill seeped through Elena's thin blouse as Mateo approached, his dark eyes fixed on her like a predator sizing up prey. In his hands, he held something that caught the light, a delicate bracelet studded with diamonds that would have been beautiful if she didn't know its true purpose. "Your wrist," he commanded, voice rough from his recent brush with death. When she hesitated, his jaw tightened. "Now." Elena extended her arm, trying to hide her trembling. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they circled her wrist, but the click of the bracelet's clasp sounded like a prison door shutting. "Try to remove it, and you'll trigger an alarm. Try to run." His thumb traced over her pulse point. "Death would be kinder than what follows. Understood?" She nodded, throat too dry for words. The diamonds winked mockingly in the morning light, a collar disguised as jewelry. "You'll join me for dinner tonight," he continued, adjusting his suit jacket. It didn't quite hide the gun holster beneath. 7 o'clock. Don't make me send someone to fetch you." Hours later, Elena found herself seated across from him in a formal dining room that dripped old-world luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the mahogany table, while armed guards stood silent as statues along the walls. Her new bracelet felt heavy as she reached for her water glass. Mateo watched her every movement with unnerving intensity. When the server placed a perfectly cooked filet mignon before her, he surprised her by reaching across with his own knife and fork. "Allow me," he said, cutting the filet Baxen's meat into precise, manageable pieces. The blade gleamed as it sliced through pink flesh. "You need to eat. You're too thin." The casual domesticity of the gesture contrasted sharply with the gun at his hip and the guards ready to kill at his command. Elena forced herself to take a bite, though her appetite had vanished. "Why?" she finally asked, setting down her fork. "Why keep me alive? Why this?" She gestured to the elaborate meal, the tracker bracelet, all of it. Mateo's dark eyes studied her over the rim of his wineglass. "You saw what no one else did." "Because I was desperate and hungry enough to crash a funeral," she countered. "Not exactly a qualification." "No." He set down his glass with deliberate care. "My own flesh and blood would have buried me alive. My closest advisors missed what was right in front of them. But you, a stranger, you saw life where everyone else saw death. That makes you either very valuable or very dangerous." "I'm neither," Elena insisted. "I'm nobody." A cruel smile curved his lips. "You stopped being nobody the moment you screamed in that church. Now you're mine." The possession in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. Yet there was something else in his expression, a flicker of vulnerability quickly masked. This man had nearly died, betrayed by those closest to him. No wonder he trusted a stranger more than family. She picked up her fork again, if only to have something to do with her hands. "Your men think I'm part of it, don't they?" "The assassination attempt? My men think what I tell them to think." His tone left no room for argument. "Eat." Elena took another bite, the expensive meat tasteless on her tongue. Mateo mirrored her, and for a few minutes, there was only the quiet clink of silverware and the soft footsteps of servers. The silence shattered when Mateo's phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he answered, speaking rapid Italian that Elena couldn't follow. But she didn't need to understand the words. The rage building in his eyes told her enough. He ended the call with brutal force, nearly cracking the phone's screen. When he looked at her again, all traces of humanity had vanished behind a mask of cold fury. "It seems," he said, each word precise and deadly, "that my would-be murderer wasn't an outsider after all. Someone in my own family thought they could take what's mine." Elena's hand trembled as she reached for her water. The diamonds on her wrist caught the light, reminding her that she too was now something Mateo considered his. She wondered if he would protect her with the same possessive fury, or if she'd become collateral damage in whatever bloody vengeance was coming. The rest of dinner passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional command to eat when Mateo caught her pushing food around her plate. She could feel the violence simmering beneath his controlled exterior, like a storm gathering strength before it broke. Yet even as fear coiled in her stomach, she couldn't forget how carefully he'd cut her meat, how his touch had been gentle despite his threats. The man before her was a study in contradictions capable of tenderness and brutality in the same breath. And now she was bound to him, marked by diamonds that might as well have been chains. The dawn painted shadows across Mateo's study as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. Elena watched him from her seat by the window, noting how his shoulders tensed with each passing moment. The betrayal from within his family had transformed his usual controlled demeanor into something darker, more volatile. "Triple the guards?" he barked into the phone. "No one enters or leaves without my direct approval." His gaze cut to Elena. "And bring Marco to the basement, now." Elena's stomach churned. She'd been in this gilded cage long enough to know what happened in the basement. "Stand up," Mateo ordered after ending the call. When she hesitated, he crossed the room in 3 long strides, gripping her arm. "You stay with me today, every minute. I don't want to see. This is not a request." His fingers pressed into her flesh, not enough to bruise, but enough to remind her of his strength. "You need to understand the world you've stumbled into." The basement air was damp and cold. Marco, one of Mateo's younger soldiers, sat tied to a metal chair. His face was already bloody. Elena tried to turn away, but Mateo's hand on her neck kept her facing forward. "Tell me who helped poison me." Mateo's voice was eerily calm. "Who paid you to look the other way?" Marco spat blood. I told you, boss. I don't know anything. The crack of the first finger breaking made Elena flinch. Marco's scream echoed off the concrete walls. Tears streamed down her face as Matteo methodically worked his way through each digit, asking the same questions between breaks. Please, she whispered. He might be telling the truth. Matteo paused, turning to her with dangerous eyes. This is the world you walked into, Elena. There is no room for mercy here. He grabbed Marco's last unbroken finger. Someone tried to kill me. Someone I trusted. And I will break every bone in every body until I find out who. The final snap was followed by Marco's sobbing confession. A name. A price. Matteo's face remained impassive as he ordered his men to clean up. Elena didn't ask what that meant. Hours later, after the sun had set and the house grew quiet, Matteo led her to his private study. Unlike the sterile office where he conducted business, this room felt lived in, personal. Books lined the walls, their spines worn from use. A leather couch faced a fireplace where flames cast dancing shadows. Sit, he said softer than before. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, handed her one. You're shaking. You tortured him. I protected what's mine. Matteo unbuttoned his bloody shirt, revealing a tapestry of scars across his chest and abdomen. Every mark is a lesson in trust. His fingers traced a particularly nasty scar near his heart. This one? My cousin. He thought he deserved to lead more than me. Elena's eyes caught on a framed photo on his desk. A younger Matteo stood between 2 elegant people, his parents, she realized. They looked regal, powerful, happy. They were murdered at our summer house, Matteo said, following her gaze. I was 15. Learned then that family bonds mean nothing compared to power. He drained his glass. The man who killed them? My father's brother, my uncle. Something in his voice made Elena look closer, behind the brutality she'd witnessed today. She saw shadows of that 15-year-old boy, forced to grow up too fast, too violent. Is that why you trust no one? She asked softly. His laugh was bitter. I trust you. The admission seemed to surprise them both. You saw life when everyone else was ready to bury me. Why? I just noticed. The way your fingers moved, how your chest rose slightly. She shrugged. I've spent years watching people, learning to read the smallest signs. When you're homeless, it's how you survive. Matteo moved closer, his heat radiating against her side. And what do you see now? A man who's been betrayed so many times he's forgotten how to be anything but a monster. Elena's voice wavered. But sometimes, like now, the monster slips. His hand found her face, thumb brushing her cheek. The gesture was surprisingly gentle from fingers that had caused so much pain hours before. You should fear me. I do, she whispered, but... The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. Elena felt her eyes growing heavy, the emotional toll of the day catching up with her. She should move, return to her room, but the leather couch was soft, and despite everything she'd witnessed, despite knowing what he was capable of, she felt safer here than anywhere else. As her consciousness faded, she felt Matteo drape something warm over her, his suit jacket. She realized distantly. The last thing she registered was his presence nearby, steady and watchful, a predator standing guard. It should have terrified her, knowing she was falling asleep in the devil's den. Instead, she drifted off feeling protected, even as her mind screamed at the wrongness of finding comfort in the arms of a monster. Elena drifted slowly from sleep, aware of an intense presence nearby. Her eyes fluttered open to find Matteo De Luca sitting in a leather armchair beside the bed, his dark gaze fixed on her. Morning light filtered through the heavy curtains, casting shadows across his sharp features. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, and his usual pristine suit slightly rumpled. You talk in your sleep, he said softly, his voice rougher than usual. Did you know that? Elena pulled the silk sheets closer, suddenly conscious of her thin nightgown. How long have you been watching me? Hours. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. I haven't slept properly in weeks. Not since before. He trailed off, but she knew he meant the poisoning attempt. Moving closer, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. For a moment, he seemed to sway toward her, his eyes dropping to her lips. Elena's breath caught in her throat, but just as quickly, He pulled back, his jaw clenching as he stood. "Get dressed," he ordered, though his voice lacked its usual edge. "You'll stay with me today." Throughout the morning, Elena noticed the stark contrasts in his behavior. When addressing her, his touch was gentle, adjusting her chair at breakfast, guiding her through doorways with a hand at the small of her back. But with his men, he was volatile, explosive. During a meeting about security breaches, one guard suggested reducing surveillance in the East Wing. Mateo's reaction was immediate and terrifying. He grabbed the man by the throat, slamming him against the wall. "You want to leave gaps in our defense?" he snarled. "After what happened to me?" The guard choked and sputtered until Mateo released him. "Get out of my sight." Elena flinched at the display, but when Mateo turned back to her, his touch was feather-light as he guided her from the room. The duality made her head spin. How could the same hands that dealt such violence also treat her with such care? As night fell, the answer came in the most terrifying way possible. Elena was in Mateo's study, curled up in an armchair while he worked at his desk, when the first gunshot shattered the silence. Mateo moved with impossible speed, vaulting over his desk and tackling her to the ground as bullets splintered the wood where she'd been sitting seconds before. "Stay down," he growled, covering her body with his own. The solid weight of him pressed her into the carpet as more shots rang out. She could feel his heart hammering against her back, his breath hot on her neck. In one fluid motion, he drew his gun and fired 3 precise shots through the study door. 3 thuds followed, but it wasn't over. More attackers burst in through the window. Mateo kept one arm around Elena while he shot with deadly accuracy. Blood sprayed across the expensive wallpaper. One man got close enough to swing a knife, but Mateo caught his wrist and snapped it before putting a bullet between his eyes. The violence was brutal, efficient, terrifying, and yet all Elena could focus on was how carefully he shielded her, how his body remained a protective barrier between her and danger. Even in the chaos of combat, he never let her go. When it was over, 6 bodies littered the floor. Mateo's white shirt was splattered with red, his eyes wild with adrenaline as he checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" His hand skimmed over her arms, her sides, her face. "Elena, tell me you're not hurt." She shook her head, trembling. "I'm okay. You protected me." Their eyes locked. The air between them crackled with something electric, dangerous. Without thinking, Elena surged forward and pressed her lips to his. Mateo froze for a split second before responding with fierce intensity. His hands tangled in her hair as he kissed her back, all passion and possession. The taste of him, mint and coffee and something darker, made her head spin. She pressed closer, wanting more, needing. He wrenched away suddenly, his breathing ragged. His eyes were black with desire as he stared down at her, but his voice was pure warning when he spoke. "If I take you, there's no going back." His fingers tightened in her hair. "You'll be mine completely, forever. Is that what you want?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and threat. Elena's heart thundered in her chest as she looked up at the man who was both monster and protector, knowing her answer would change everything. Morning sunlight crept through the study's heavy curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Elena sat curled in a leather armchair, watching Mateo pace like a caged animal. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his usual composed demeanor cracking under the weight of sleepless nights. "I trusted him." Mateo's voice was raw, barely above a whisper. He stopped at the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. "My own brother, Luca. He orchestrated everything." Elena's heart clenched at the pain in his voice. Gone was the ruthless Mafia boss who had terrorized her just days ago. In his place stood a man betrayed by his own blood. "The poison?" she asked softly. "Specially crafted. Slow acting, meant to look like natural causes." His shoulders tensed as he turned to face her. "Luca wanted control. He always did. But I never thought." He broke off, jaw clenching. Elena rose from her chair, drawn to him despite herself. "Why are you telling me this?" Mateo's dark eyes met hers, filled with a vulnerability that made her breath catch. "Because when I was lying in that coffin, I'd accepted death. Everything I believed in, family, loyalty, trust, it all meant nothing. I was ready to let go." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Then you screamed. You, a stranger, saw what my own flesh and blood ignored. You fought for my life when others were content to bury me." His hand lifted to her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Elena shivered but didn't pull away. This close, she could see the weariness etched into his features, the weight of betrayal in his eyes. "You terrify me," he admitted quietly. "Not because I fear you're a threat, but because you make me feel things I thought died long ago." Elena's fingers trembled as she reached for him, touching the scar that curved along his jaw. He tensed but allowed it, watching her with predatory intensity. "Tell me," she whispered. "Knife fight, 15 years old, my first kill." His voice was distant, lost in memory. "Father said it was necessary. Show weakness, and they'll destroy everything you love." Her hand slid lower, tracing another scar at his collar. Mateo caught her wrist, but didn't push her away. Instead, he slowly unbuttoned his shirt, revealing more scars mapping his torso like a brutal constellation. "Bullet wound." He indicated a puckered mark near his heart. "Rival family. They killed my mother that day." His breath hitched as Elena's fingers ghosted over it. "Burns from a car bomb that took my uncle. Knife wounds from countless fights." Each scar told a story of violence and loss. Elena's touch was gentle, a stark contrast to the brutality written on his skin. Mateo's eyes closed, his breathing uneven. "What are you most afraid of?" she asked, her palm resting over his heartbeat. "That I'll never be more than this." His voice was barely audible. "A monster who only knows how to destroy. That everything I touch turns to blood and ash." Elena stepped closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his words. "You're not just a monster, Mateo. I've seen the other side of you." His eyes opened, dark and hungry, one hand tangled in her hair, the other gripping her waist. "The side that wants to possess you completely? That would burn the world to keep you safe?" His lips brushed her temple. "That's still the monster, Elena." She tilted her face up, their breath mingling. "Maybe I'm not afraid of monsters anymore." Mateo groaned, his control visibly slipping. He backed her against the wall, caging her with his body. Elena's heart raced as his mouth hovered above hers, the tension electric between them. "Last chance to run," he warned, voice rough with need. Instead of answering, Elena pulled him down, their lips meeting in a kiss that set her world ablaze. Mateo kissed like a man starved, all-consuming passion and desperate need. His hands roamed her body possessively as she clung to his shoulders. The door burst open with a bang. They jerked apart as Antonio, Mateo's consigliere, rushed in clutching a manila folder. His face was ashen. "Boss, forgive the interruption, but..." His eyes darted to Elena, then back to Mateo. "We found something. About her." Mateo's expression hardened instantly, the vulnerable man vanishing behind his Mafia mask. "Speak." Antonio handed over the folder with trembling hands. "Her father. We identified him. Giorgio Rossi." Elena's blood ran cold at the name. Mateo went absolutely still beside her, his body radiating dangerous tension as he opened the folder. "The accountant who betrayed the Rossi family," Antonio continued. "The one who stole millions and disappeared 10 years ago. She's his daughter." Mateo's head snapped up, his eyes boring into Elena with lethal intensity. All the tenderness from moments ago had vanished, replaced by something dark and deadly. Elena backed away, her heart pounding. "Mateo, don't." His voice cut like ice. "Don't say a word." The monster was back, and Elena realized with terrifying clarity that she might have just lost her only chance at survival. The study door crashed open, making Elena jump. Mateo stormed in, his face contorted with a rage she'd never seen before. His consigliere trailed behind, clutching papers that trembled in his hands. "You lying little snake?" Mateo's voice was deadly quiet. He advanced on Elena, who instinctively backed away until she hit the bookshelf. "Was this your plan all along? Seduce the monster? Make him weak? What? I don't understand." Elena's voice shook as Mateo slammed his palm against the shelf beside her head. "Antonio Rossi's daughter." He spat the name like poison. "The man who stole millions from my family, who sold our secrets to our enemies. And now his daughter shows up at my funeral?" His laugh was bitter, broken. "There are no coincidences in my world. No, please." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I haven't seen my father since I was 12. He abandoned us, left me and my mother with nothing." "Lies." Mateo grabbed her shoulders, fingers digging in painfully. You expect me to believe you just happened to be there? That you just happened to save my life? Yes, Elena shouted back, even as tears streamed down her face. I was hungry. I was cold. I only wanted food from the reception. I didn't even know whose funeral it was. But Mateo's eyes had gone cold. That terrible emptiness she'd seen when he tortured his enemies returning. He released her roughly, stepping back as if her touch burned. Lock her in the east wing, he ordered the guards. No one enters without my permission. Mateo, please. Elena reached for him, but he jerked away. I swear I'm telling the truth. My father ruined my life too. I've been alone, on the streets. Take her. His voice was ice as he turned his back on her. I won't make the mistake of trusting those eyes again. The guards grabbed Elena's arms, dragging her from the study as she struggled. Mateo, please listen to me. I didn't know. But he didn't turn around, his shoulders rigid as stone as the door slammed behind her. Hours passed in, the locked bedroom. Elena paced, crying until no tears remained. The diamond bracelet on her wrist felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds now, a shackle rather than a gift. Outside, the sunset and darkness crept across the grounds. The first explosion rocked the entire wing. Elena ran to the window just as gunfire erupted. Black-clad figures swarmed across the lawn, overwhelming Mateo's guards with military precision. Her heart stopped when she saw the man leading them, his features so similar to Mateo's but twisted with cruelty. Luca. The bedroom door splintered inward. Elena screamed as men grabbed her, rough hands clamping over her mouth. She kicked and fought, but they were too strong. Brother's new toy? One sneered, twisting her arm until she cried out. Boss wants this one alive. They dragged her down the hallway as chaos erupted throughout the mansion. Gunfire, breaking glass, screams of dying men. Elena struggled harder when she heard Mateo's voice bellowing orders somewhere below. Mateo! She screamed as they hauled her toward a side entrance. Mateo, help! But the sounds of fighting drowned her out. The men shoved her into a waiting van, binding her hands and feet. As they peeled away from the estate, Elena caught one last glimpse of the mansion through tear-blurred eyes. Smoke rose from one wing, muzzle flashes lighting up windows like deadly fireworks. Inside his study, Mateo executed the last of Luca's men who'd breached the room. Blood soaked his white shirt, none of it his own. His phone buzzed a message from his security team. Boss, they took her. Your brother has Elena. The crystal tumbler in his hand shattered as his fingers clenched. Blood dripped from his palm, but he didn't feel it. All he felt was rage, pure, consuming rage that turned his vision red. Find them, he snarled to his remaining men. Turn this city upside down. I want every safe house, every warehouse, every rat hole searched. He stalked to his weapons cabinet, loading guns with mechanical precision. I want my brother's head on a spike, and I want her back. His men scrambled to obey, but Mateo barely saw them. All he could see was Elena's face as he turned away from her. The hurt in those eyes that had once saved his life. If anything happened to her, he slammed his bleeding fist into the wall. I'm coming for you, brother, he whispered into the chaos. And this time, one of us isn't walking away. Elena's head throbbed as consciousness crept back. The cold concrete beneath her cheek made her shiver, and the metallic taste of blood lingered on her split lip. Her wrists burned from the zip ties cutting into her skin, and every breath sent sharp pains through her ribs where they'd kicked her. The warehouse stretched vast and dark around her, moonlight filtering through broken windows high above. Abandoned machinery cast long shadows across the floor, their rusty forms like sleeping monsters in the gloom. The air reeked of mildew and something worse, something metallic and organic that made her stomach turn. Finally awake, little spy? Luca's voice echoed through the space. His footsteps approached, expensive leather shoes clicking against concrete. He looked so much like Mateo, but wrong where Mateo's eyes held controlled fury. Luca's gleamed with cruel pleasure. He crouched before her, grabbing her chin roughly. Such a pretty thing. No wonder my brother got soft. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and Elena jerked away despite the pain it caused. You'll make perfect bait. Mateo always did have a weakness for beautiful broken things. He'll kill you, Elena spat, tasting fresh blood. Luca laughed, the sound bouncing off the warehouse walls. Oh, he'll try. But Big Brother's predictable when he's angry. He'll come charging in like a bull, and we'll be ready. He stood, straightening his designer suit. By sunrise, I'll be the new head of the DeLuca family, and you'll be just another body in the Toma harbor. Across the city, Matteo DeLuca's estate hummed with lethal energy. The grounds swarmed with heavily armed men, vehicles lined up in military precision. Inside his armory, Matteo methodically checked his weapons while his captains reported in. The Russo family has pledged their support, boss. Their men are moving into position now. The captain's voice was steady, but his eyes showed fear. He'd never seen Matteo like this. The cold calculation was gone, replaced by something primal and merciless. The Calabrese brothers, too, another added. They remember how you helped them in the war with the Mexicans. They're offering 200 men. Matteo didn't respond, focused on loading magazines with mechanical precision. His silence was more terrifying than any rage. The room stank of gun oil and fear as his men waited for orders. Finally, he looked up. The darkness in his eyes made hardened killers step back. I want every safe house hit simultaneously. Every business front, every warehouse. Burn it all until we find her. His voice was soft, deadly. Anyone who helped Luca dies screaming. Anyone who knew and didn't warn me dies slower. Elena had seen glimpses of Matteo's power before in the way his men jumped at his commands, in the luxury that surrounded him. But this was different. This was an army materializing from shadows, an empire rising to war. Hundreds of men moved at his word, bringing enough firepower to level the city. The captain's phone buzzed. Sir, our informant in the Port Authority came through. Large power draw from the abandoned Fisher shipping warehouse. Security cameras disabled 2 hours ago. Matteo's hand stilled on his gun. Show me. Satellite images appeared on tablets. Thermal scans showing clusters of armed men around the warehouse perimeter. Inside, a single heat signature huddled on the ground, surrounded by guards. Elena? Matteo breathed, and for a moment, raw anguish crossed his face before vanishing behind cold fury. He turned to his weapons wall, selecting a matte black tactical vest. Boss, it's obviously a trap, his consigliere warned. Luca will have the whole place rigged. He's expecting you to rush in. Of course it's a trap. Matteo's voice was ice as he efficiently strapped on the vest, checking the ceramic plates. But my brother forgets I taught him everything he knows about warfare. But not everything I know. He moved to the gun rack, selecting a suppressed automatic pistol and several spare magazines. Each motion was precise, practiced, the ritual of a man preparing for war. His men watched in tense silence as he armed himself, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Il Diavolo unleashed, with no restraints, no mercy. As he checked his final weapon, Matteo paused. In the fluorescent light, his face looked carved from stone, but his whispered words carried raw emotion. She saw life in me when I was already dead. Now I'll kill anyone who tries to take her. The words seemed to electrify the room. His men straightened, hands tightening on weapons. They'd followed Matteo through blood and fire before. But this was different. This wasn't business. This was personal. This was their boss fighting for something more precious than territory or profit. Matteo slid his gun into its holster with deadly finality. Move out. We take back what's mine, and my brother learns why they call me Il Diavolo. The garage doors rolled open, revealing an armada of black SUVs and tactical vehicles. Engines roared to life as hundreds of armed men prepared to unleash hell on anyone who stood between Matteo DeLuca and the woman who had awakened his heart. The warehouse doors exploded inward with a deafening bang. Glass and metal rained down as Matteo DeLuca strode through the destruction, his black suit pristine despite the chaos. 2 chrome-plated pistols gleamed in his hands, and his eyes held the cold emptiness of death itself. Find her, he commanded, his voice, carrying through the cavernous space. His men fanned out like shadows, their weapons raised. The first of Luca's guards emerged from behind a stack of crates, weapon half raised. Matteo's shot caught him between the eyes before he could squeeze the trigger. The body hadn't hit the floor before 2 more fell, their blood painting abstract patterns across rusted machinery. Brother, Luca's voice echoed. Come to save your little street rat? Matteo's response was another gunshot, dropping a man who thought himself hidden in the rafters. The body crashed through rotting wood, landing with a wet thud that made Elena flinch. From her position on her knees, Elena could see it all unfolding like a nightmare. Her vision blurred from tears and the swelling around her left eye, but she couldn't look away. Matteo moved like a force of nature. Each step precise, each shot fatal. His men cleared the paths ahead of him, but it was their boss who dealt the most devastating damage. "You always were too soft," Luca taunted from somewhere behind Elena. His fingers dug painfully into her shoulder. "Letting a woman make you weak." More gunfire erupted. Elena counted 6 shots, 6 bodies hitting concrete. Matteo reloaded with mechanical precision, empty magazines clattering to the floor. The sound echoed like church bells in a graveyard. "The mighty Il Diavolo," Luca sneered, brought low by a homeless girl. "What would father say?" "Let's ask him." Matteo's voice came from much closer now. "After I send you to him." Elena felt cold steel press against her temple. Luca yanked her head back by her hair, using her as a shield. She could smell his fear beneath his expensive cologne. "One step closer, and I paint the floor with her brains," Luca warned. "Drop the guns, brother." Matteo emerged from the shadows 30 feet away. Blood spattered his white shirt, but his face remained eerily calm. Only his eyes betrayed the inferno raging within. They burned with something beyond fury, beyond hatred. They promised extinction. "You were always terrible at chess," Matteo said softly, never thinking more than one move ahead. Elena felt Luca's grip tighten. "I said drop them. You forget, brother." Matteo's lips curved into a predator's smile. "I taught you everything you know, but not everything I know." A red dot appeared on Luca's forehead, a sniper's laser sight from one of the high windows. Elena felt him freeze. "Now you have a choice," Matteo continued, taking another step forward. "Die quick or die slow." "You wouldn't risk hitting her," Luca snarled, but his voice wavered. "Try me." Everything happened in a blur. Elena felt Luca's grip loosen for a fraction of a second as uncertainty gripped him. She threw herself sideways, just as Matteo had taught her during late-night self-defense lessons she'd thought nothing of at the time. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. The sniper's bullet took Luca in the shoulder, spinning him away from Elena. Matteo's shot caught him in the knee, dropping him to the ground. Elena scrambled away as Matteo closed the distance. His shoe pressed down on Luca's gun hand, grinding until bones cracked. "You were right about one thing," Matteo said, looking down at his brother. "Father would be disappointed. In you." Luca spat blood. "You're nothing but her puppet now." "No." Matteo crouched down, pressing his gun under Luca's chin. "I'm what I've always been, the one who protects what's mine." His voice dropped to a whisper. "No one touches what's mine." The gunshot echoed with terrible finality. Matteo stood slowly, holstering his weapon. His eyes found Elena, and the killing coldness melted into something else entirely. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, dropping to his knees beside her. "Elena." His hands were impossibly gentle as they cupped her face, examining her injuries. "Mi amor." She couldn't stop shaking as he cut through the zip ties. The moment her hands were free, she collapsed against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, one hand cradling her head, the other pressing her close. "Never again," he murmured into her hair. "No one will ever take you from me again." She breathed in his scent, gunpowder, leather, and that expensive cologne that was uniquely him. His heart thundered against her cheek, betraying the fear he'd never show the world. "I thought," her voice cracked, "when you found out about my father." "Shh." His grip tightened. "I was a fool. You were never the enemy. You were the only one who saw me, the only one who brought me back to life." Around them, his men secured the warehouse, but Matteo didn't move. He held her as if she might disappear, his fingers running through her hair, his lips pressing kisses to her temple. "Take me home," Elena whispered against his chest. Matteo stood, lifting her in his arms as if she weighed nothing, her head tucked perfectly under his chin. And despite the blood staining his clothes, despite the bodies lying cold on the warehouse floor, Elena had never felt safer. Moonlight spilled through the windows of Matteo's estate as he carried Elena up the grand staircase. Her body trembled against his chest, her fingers clutching his blood-stained shirt. The night's violence clung to him like a second skin, but his touch remained impossibly gentle as he settled her onto the edge of his master bathroom's marble counter. "Don't move," he ordered softly, reaching for the first aid kit. Elena watched as his hands, the same ones that had dealt death mere hours ago, now shook slightly while opening antiseptic wipes. "I can do it myself," she whispered, but Matteo silenced her with a look that burned with possession. "Let me take care of what's mine." His voice was rough as he dabbed at the cut on her cheek, his other hand cupping her face. Elena winced, and his jaw tightened. "I should have killed him slower for marking you." "You're hurt too," she noticed, reaching for a gash on his forearm, but he caught her wrist. "This is nothing." He continued cleaning her wounds with precise movements. "I've had worse, but seeing you in his hands." His words broke off, darkness clouding his features. Elena touched his face, feeling the muscle in his jaw jump. "You came for me. I will always come for you." His eyes met hers, stripped of their usual barriers. "When they took you, something inside me." He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing ragged. "I thought I'd lost you before I could tell you." "Tell me what?" Her heart thundered against her ribs. Instead of answering, he traced her bottom lip with his thumb. The tender gesture contrasted sharply with the dried blood still staining his knuckles. Elena turned her face into his palm, pressing a kiss there. "I love you," she whispered against his skin. "I know I shouldn't. I know it's dangerous, but I do." Matteo went absolutely still. Then his hands framed her face, tilting it up to his. "Say it again. I love you." Her voice grew stronger. "Even knowing what you are, what you've done, I love you." A sound like pain tore from his throat. "Elena." He crushed his mouth to hers, kissing her with desperate intensity. His hands slid into her hair, cradling her head as though she might shatter. "Mine," he growled against her lips. "Only mine." "Yours," she agreed, and something wild flared in his eyes. He lifted her from the counter, carrying her to his bedroom. The massive space was all dark wood and crisp linens, but Elena barely noticed as Matteo laid her on the bed with reverent care. "If we do this," he warned, hovering over her, "there's no going back. You'll be mine completely." Elena reached up to unbutton his shirt, revealing the scarred skin beneath. "I already am." That was all it took to break his control. His mouth claimed hers again, harder this time, demanding. His hands roamed her body with possessive heat, stripping away clothing, until there was nothing between them but skin and desperate need. "Beautiful," he breathed, mapping her body with calloused fingers. Every touch ignited fire in her veins. When his mouth followed the path of his hands, Elena arched off the bed with a gasp. "Please," she begged, not even sure what she was asking for. But Matteo knew. He covered her body with his powerful muscles coiled with restraint. "Look at me," he commanded softly. When she met his gaze, the tenderness there stole her breath. "I need to see you." Their bodies joined slowly, carefully, despite the urgency burning between them. Elena clutched his shoulders as pleasure built, wave after wave. Matteo whispered Italian endearments against her skin, his control fracturing with each movement. When release finally claimed them both, Elena cried out his name like a prayer. Matteo buried his face in her neck, his entire body shuddering. After, he gathered her close, pressing kisses to her temple, her cheeks, her lips. Elena traced the scars on his chest, memorizing each mark that told the story of his survival. "I was dead inside that coffin," he murmured into her hair. "Not from the poison, from years of nothing but violence and betrayal. Then you saw me. Really saw me." His arms tightened around her. "You brought me back from the grave, love, and I swear I'll spend my life protecting you." Elena pressed closer, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady against her cheek. Here, wrapped in his arms, the violence of their world seemed distant. She knew tomorrow would bring new dangers, new battles, but tonight, in this moment, there was only this, his skin against hers, his breath in her hair, and the knowledge that she'd found home in the most dangerous place imaginable. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the marble floors of the De Luca estate, as Elena walked beside Matteo through the grand hallway. Her steps, once hesitant and fearful, now matched his confident stride. The transformation wasn't lost on anyone. Where guards once watched her with suspicion, they now bowed their heads in deference. "Good morning, Miss Rossi." Mario, the head of security, greeted with a respectful nod. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, held a new warmth. Just weeks ago, He'd been among those who'd wanted her dead. Mateo's hand rested possessively on her lower back as they passed, a subtle reminder to everyone of her position. The diamond bracelet that had once marked her as a prisoner now sparkled as a symbol of her elevation. She wore it by choice, matching the heavy rings on Mateo's fingers that marked him as capo. In the dining room, the staff hurried to pull out their chairs. Elena noticed how they'd already set her place at Mateo's right hand, no longer at the far end where prisoners and guests Saturday. The china gleamed, the silverware perfectly aligned, a far cry from the paper plates she'd once eaten from on the streets. The accounts from Monaco cleared. Antonio, Mateo's consigliere, reported as he entered with a stack of papers. He paused, seeing Elena. "Should I come back later, boss?" "No," Mateo replied, his deep voice firm. "What concerns me now concerns her." His dark eyes found Elena's. "She stays." The meeting continued through breakfast, Elena listening as millions moved through shadow accounts, as territories were divided and alliances secured. She caught details others missed, a skill that had saved Mateo's life once and now proved invaluable in business. When she pointed out a discrepancy in the numbers, Mateo's proud smile made her heart race. As evening approached, Mateo summoned his inner circle to the formal dining room. The most powerful members of the De Luca family filed in, capos, lieutenants, and made men who controlled everything from dock operations to political bribes. Elena felt their curious glances as she sat at Mateo's side. The crystal glasses clinked as servants poured deep red wine. Mateo stood, commanding attention without a word. The room fell silent. "Many of you once questioned Elena's presence here," he began, his voice carrying to every corner. "Some even called for her death." His dark gaze swept the room, a reminder of what happened to those who'd opposed him. "But she saw life in me when my own blood left me for dead. She became my eyes when I needed to see clearly, my strength when I needed to rise again." He turned to Elena, extending his hand. She rose, her fingers sliding into his as naturally as breathing. "Tonight, I announce what you all must already know. Elena will be my wife, my equal, my queen." His grip tightened. "Anyone who challenges this will answer to me personally." The room erupted in congratulations, though Elena noticed some forced smiles among the genuine ones. It didn't matter. They'd learn, as others had, that crossing Mateo De Luca meant death. Crossing his queen would be no different. Weeks later, Elena stood in the cathedral where their story began, this time not as a desperate intruder but as a bride. The same marble angels that had witnessed her screaming about Mateo's breathing now watched her walk toward him in white lace. The pews held no mourners now, only the most trusted members of their world. Mateo waited at the altar, his black suit sharp against his olive skin, his eyes burning with possession as she approached. The priest, well paid to overlook the blood money that built his church, began the ceremony. They exchanged rings, heavy gold bands that matched the weight of their commitment. When Mateo spoke his vows, his voice carried the same intensity as his threats once had. "I swear my life, my death, and everything between to you alone." Elena's voice trembled, but held firm. "I choose you, your darkness and your light, until death parts us, and even then I'll find you again." The priest pronounced them husband and wife. Mateo pulled her close, one hand tangling in her hair as the other gripped her waist. His kiss was fierce, claiming, a reminder of every moment that had led them here. When they parted, his whisper was for her alone. "The world buried me once. You brought me back. Now you're mine forever." Elena touched the scar on his neck where the poison had nearly taken him, feeling his pulse strong and steady beneath her fingers. She belonged to him completely, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd given her his empire and his heart. The homeless girl who'd snuck into a funeral was gone. In her place stood a queen, ready to rule beside her king in their world of shadows and blood. The cathedral bells rang out across the city as they walked down the aisle together, marking not just their union but the rise of a new era in the De Luca Empire. Their enemies would learn that while Mateo was deadly alone, he was unstoppable with his queen beside him. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.